better. You can score over 100 points on that as well, should you be very lean and very muscly. So we want to look at maybe bringing up 1 point at a time each time we do it. But going over to the other side here, it will just give you an idea of your total body water, okay? Water available in the body. You want to be on the higher end of that, okay? So important to be very well hydrated all the time. So it will give you a range in between, and well done, Antos, you're over on it. Antos very hydrated all the time. So just having a look at that, and that might be as well one of the goals that is a little bit low on that range. So we want to try and bring that up. It also gives you total amount of protein available within the muscle. So if you're to kind of bring all the fluid out of the muscle, the protein available within that, that's what's kind of left there. Okay, you want that range to be higher. If your general muscle mass is kind of low, then that number will be lower as well. So increasing general muscle mass will correlate to the amount of protein available in the body. Same thing with the minerals. So that gives you an idea as well. Gives you a little bit of a scale there as well. If you were kind of on the lower end of that scale, I might say, okay, maybe a DEXA scan is a good idea. But again, that is something that will increase once your muscle mass also increases, okay? Body fat mass, again, gives you a little scale on that. It's a little bit printed just off this as well. So make sure that you're on the right one there. So body fat mass kind of gives you an ideal range as well, okay? I find some of this with the body fat and the weight, that low range would be so low, like Anto's low range on it was 57, and that's probably just like, you'll still be just about alive.
Oh.
Do not look at that, okay? Do not look at that, not a good number, do not like that. But just to give you, even your higher number actually is low, you know, but your score is very high at the same time. So it is, your muscle weighs a lot more obviously than your fat too. So
especially mine.
Yeah. So heavy,
special muscle.
So just a little bit from that, let's just go back over to underneath your total score, and you can see the kind of weight control, and it might say minus 12 kilos, but it wants you to lose 14 kilos of fat and increase 2 kilos of muscle. Okay, so it might give you an increase in muscle if your general amount is kind of low, or it might just say fat control coming down. Okay, and in the 21st century, that is the norm for everybody. Okay, we go through the muscle fat analysis. Then below that, okay, these are the ones with the 3 lines here. Okay, if you have kind of lower muscle mass, you might be in this kind of a C shape. Okay. We want to, first of all, create that and bring that into an I shape. So generally it's going to be increasing muscle while trying not to increase too much on the weight or the body fat, or the body fat may come down, but again, it's kind of a hard thing to do there. So ideally, we have what Anto has here, very nice D shape, okay, with the muscle mass being quite high. The weight is in the over too. Okay, but that correlates with that middle number up here. But it's extremely still very healthy. But like that, if you go down to the BMI, he's going to go to the doctor and they're going to say, oh, your BMI are actually very obese. Or on the range of nearly coming to. So just to show you, it doesn't mean a whole lot. It is more to do with the ratios of your weight, your skeletal muscle mass, and your body fat percentage. Okay. Sorry, your body fat mass. Below your BMI, you have percentage body fat there, okay? So it kind of gives you your range as well of percentage, and for guys it's between like 10 and 20%. I think girls is like 18 and 28 or something. That would be ideal for health, and then obviously anything below that, we want to even bring that up a little bit, okay? Again, just in terms of health and things functioning correctly, we want to have a normal body fat percentage, okay? In that normal, so you see you have under normal and over on all those ranges there, okay? It does segment you into little bits as well, okay? So we have your left and right side, you might be slightly over a muscle on the good side, or potentially you're not good side, okay? It could actually be the opposite way around, that's a little bit overworked, maybe that in the middle of your lean, that's your core mass there, in terms of muscle, okay, in the midline. And then you have left and right, okay. There might be just slight differences from either side, and that's totally normal as well. It does give you fat breakdown too, okay. That's generally pretty standard and normal all over. The midline is very easy to have like an over mark in that as well. That's where everything kind of sits, is in around that midline. And if we just jump over there for a second to the visceral fat level, that kind of has to do with the body fat percentage and the amount in around the midsection. So your visceral fat, like that fat that sits in around the organs, and that's what I would look for. That is your health marker, and that's what we want to see. If that is kind of even in around the 10, it might be over 10, but we want to be looking at getting it to that mid-range, and then slowly over time bringing that down as well. Okay, as long as it's on the downward projection, that's ideal. Okay, that's your visceral fat. Okay. Most other important bits there I would go over. So just down to the visceral fat, you have some research parameters. It says your basal metabolic rate there, okay? What you burn on a daily basis just to keep your bits running, okay? Your brain functioning, all right? So minimum that amount of calories, okay? And then we go down, look at the recommended on the bottom of that, the recommended calorie intake, okay? That is for a training day when you're in working out, doing your strength pieces, doing your cardio pieces. Then it wants you to increase that so you get your recovery in as well. Okay? And then we will look at the bottom. So one, for some of you, it might be your very first one. Actually, this will be like your 8th one or something. So you can see the lines up and down, okay, over time. We have your weight at the top, and we have the skeletal muscle mass in the middle, and we have your body fat percentage on the bottom there. And depending on what the goals are, then we can see after each one. So these are the parameters that we'll keep for you. So the next one you'll see, and you'll see going on and on and on. All right. With that, I don't like calorie expenditure for exercise. Okay, just discard that. Yeah. Like that. I mean, you can climb a mountain, maybe you can climb it like this, or you can climb it like this. Okay, so that's completely. I'm not mad on that part of it. But the rest is great. As I say, the main part on that as well is trying to see that change in the shape on that middle bit, okay? From, let's say, a C to an I shape, and then into D for really good body composition. That's what we'll be going for. It does give you a breakdown on the back of all of the things. That will probably be explained a little bit better than I did. Okay? But if we any questions on that, if it's specific to your scan, I might put in a little thing into the group as well, or you can even catch me just after and just say, like, specifically for this, then what is it? But I know if you put in some questions there for Karen as well. So I will let you go through them on that second. Thank you. Hi guys. Everyone has worksheets, yes. Yes. Oh, perfect. I suppose for those of you who don't know me or maybe don't know me outside of the gym, my name is Karen. I'm a lecturer in public health and performance nutrition at ATU. And I suppose outside of my role in academia, I work primarily in performance nutrition. Since moving back to Ireland, it's been predominantly in the GAA. And when I was in the UK, it was with soccer, so Sunderland and Newcastle Football Club, with British Gymnastics. So I suppose GAA is obviously at the forefront here, so that's kind of where I'm at. So I suppose I spend a lot of my time, specifically this time of year, going through creating of healthy habits. So basically they form part of your routine, implementing good, safe, evidence-based nutritional practices. Okay, I suppose that's where I'm coming from, because I suppose you can go everywhere and nutrition is fully saturating most social media outlets, okay, and that's not always for the better, okay, so hopefully today is really just providing you with some evidence-based recommendations to get yourself on the road to where you want to be, okay, so the body stat, or the in-body that Holly just went through, is a really nice kind of objective measure to see how you're feeling from a body composition point of view, okay? And what I mean by that is it's objective, so there are very few things that you can do bar put in the work that will change it. So like your opinion doesn't change what those readings say. But
don't use those in isolation. So don't look at that and say, okay, well, this is what my numbers say, this is what I have to do, and I need to change all of these things. Consider subjectively how you're feeling, how you're sleeping, how your energy levels are, how you're performing in the gym. That coupled with your body's composition scores is going to be the best way to kind of monitor change and progress, okay? So don't underestimate those subjective feelings of energy and performance, etc. Okay, so that's the whole idea that, today we talk about healthy habits, of which I'm going to speak predominantly on nutrition. Making little changes, so you might take one thing away from today, go away and implement it, and then you might come back to your notes or come back and have a discussion with myself, Holly or Anto, and then make another change and implement it. Based on everyone's life and family commitments, some of those changes might not work and it might not be sustainable, so you find what works for you and then you implement those little changes, and eventually over time you get hopefully to where you want to be. Okay, so in terms of how I'm going to go through today, I'll talk very much about the basics of nutrition to start off with. Nutrition, just like S&C psychology, is not a blanket one-size-fits-all, but there are fundamentals that everybody should know, and it's very hard to build on that and go that little step further in terms of nutrition unless you have the foundations laid. Okay, so I'm aware that everybody here will have different goals and different knowledge around nutrition, so hopefully the idea is that everybody gets a little bit out of it today and can go from there. Okay, before we start and get into it, on the first page of your template is a food diary. I am not going to look at this. The person beside you, unless they're sneaking a sneaky glance, are not going to look at it. This is for yourself. So yesterday, and it was probably unfair because yesterday was a Saturday, but just write down everything you remember that you had to eat and drink yesterday, from morning until you went to bed. Okay, and it's just a reference point for yourself. As I said, I'm not going to look at it, I'm not going to analyse it, but have a write down of everything that you remember you ate and drank. If you can remember, was it satisfying, were you feeling full after, did you have to reach for something else? Timings of the meals, so did you stick to that breakfast, lunch and dinner, snacks, or did you kind of just sporadically eat throughout the day? So just kind of write down and reflect on kind of what you had yesterday. When people ask me about nutrition, they're like, I don't know anything about nutrition, I don't know am I eating well or not. I can guarantee you, as you wrote down what you ate yesterday, you're thinking, ooh, not great, but oh, actually that's not bad. So you do have some idea. Sometimes it's more the accountability of not, or being told by somebody else. So have a look at your food diary in front of you, okay? And what I often ask, athletes if I work with or people is, would you happily hand that to me? Would you happily be like, yeah, there you go. Most people will say no, okay? And that's absolutely fine, okay? That's absolutely, there's different things to be learned. If I wrote down everything I ate yesterday, I wouldn't even like to, record it myself, okay? So, but you can look there and you can say, right, just visually inspecting, were there large periods of time where you went without eating at all? Did you train in the morning and then eat nothing until 6 or 7 o'clock in the evening? Are you the opposite? Did you snack repeatedly throughout the day? Okay, so you can get little bits of nuggets of information just from visually looking at what it was, or are you looking there and saying there was a lot of processed food or a lot of fatty foods, or had I very low carbs or very low protein, did I not drink a lot of water? You can get a lot from something very, very simple like that, okay? So just for yourself, it's kind of nice, and we'll come back to this in a little bit. So in terms of nutrition, I suppose it's, as I said, it's a fully saturated market now at the moment, which is quite frustrating. It's great that people are looking for information. And I was only chatting down to the last day about the increase. I was over in the UK examining a girl who's doing her PhD on online resources over COVID, and people looking for nutrition information online. And the numbers have gone through the roof since COVID, and they've stayed up in the last 2 years. So it's great that people are going out and looking for information. I think that's fantastic. The issue is the information that they're getting back, okay? So we need to make sure that when we are, chatting to people, and, I'm not saying that everybody has to be a qualified nutritionist, I'm not saying that at all, okay? I'm saying that some people give dangerous information, they're the ones we want to avoid, or they're paid to give advice or recommend supplements and things like that. So we just need to be a little bit more savvy with how we take in our nutritional advice, okay? But you're in a fantastic environment where I've had umpteen conversations with Anto and Holly who know exactly what they're doing, so use the people who are available to you, okay? Instead, I know it's hard sometimes when we're kind of bombarded with information. So I suppose with that, the nutrition market or the supplement companies also trying to bombard us with lots of information. It's not just our social media, it's companies and industry. So we need to remember that when we're talking about building a strong nutritional pyramid, we have to start at the bottom, okay? We have to start at the basics. So this is what I would call my kind of nutrition pyramid, how I would deliver nutrition to individuals, okay? So you will be somewhere along this, okay? I'm not going to ask you where you are, but hopefully in your head you can kind of think to yourself. So the bottom of the pyramid is healthy eating. So generally, okay, not always, but you generally follow the healthy eating guidelines. You know, we try and get lots of fruit and veg, we get a little bit of carbohydrates, we get proteins, we stay away from processed foods. We have them in moderation, but they're not part of our everyday diet. We're eating to feel well, to feel healthy, okay? That is our bottom of our nutritional pyramid, okay? And some of you might be in this section, or trying to work your way into this section, trying to kind of stay within that, okay? And that's great, okay? If you have the foundations, you have the basics, we can start moving along. Some of you will be in this kind of performance nutrition section where I eat quite well, and now I'm looking about how I can eat to help me in the gym, how I can eat to help change my body composition, how I can start looking at carbohydrates and proteins and those kind of things, and looking a little bit more around, you know, performance goals, body composition goals, okay? So you could be in here. Some of you could be at the top. So you kind of know roughly how much protein, carbohydrates you should be having. You're having that throughout the day. And now you're looking at things like timing of meals before training or after training or recovery, or timing of protein throughout the day to help with lean mass or to help drop body fat. And you're in this section up here. So you're really just perfecting your diet and your intake. And then finally, this is the last part. This is the supplements. These are things that I can add on to my diet that will help with performance measures, etc. The problem is, this is how we're taught to look at nutrition. So we have supplements at the bottom, and then people are trying to work backwards. People are trying to supplement, think about timings, and all these basics are getting completely overlooked. And that's not going to be sustainable long term. Okay, so we need to make sure that we're building strong foundations and we're building on that. So think to yourself just in your head where you think you're at. So are you trying to get into this section? Are you somewhere here? Are you here? Or are you here? Okay? The idea is after today, you implement a habit that moves you slightly up here, or slightly up here, or all the way up. Okay? So you get those little gradual steps. Nobody is going to go from here to here overnight. Okay? And it's important that we know that it's kind of a gradual thing that happens. Okay? So just think to yourself roughly where you are at the moment. Okay? To give you a little bit more context, so let's start with this health one. Are people familiar with the healthy eating guidelines? Yeah, I actually think kids nowadays in school actually learn a lot about this. I don't ever remember learning about health eating guidelines when I was in school, but it is part of their syllabus. I argue it could be a bigger part, like physical education is now a mandatory subject. I do think nutrition is going that way, and there's lots of lobbying around it. But if you're not familiar with the healthy eating guidelines, here are the healthy eating guidelines, kind of roughly there in the pyramid on the left. Love an pyramid in nutrition. Okay, so these were changed in 2016. So we had healthy eating guidelines. Healthy Survey Ireland came back, found that our diet was pretty crap, and we changed our guidelines in line with that survey. So in 2016, these changed, okay, to basically replicate the problems that we face in Ireland in terms of our diet, okay? And so, can't really see here, and I can share this anyway separately, but the bottom of the pyramid is our fruit and veg. So that wasn't the base of the pyramid before 2016, okay? That moved to be the base of the pyramid because it found that as a nation, we don't eat a lot of fruit and veg, okay? So this is now 5 to 7 portions a day, okay? So that was 3 to 5, it moved, it became a priority in Irish diet, and it's now a priority on our food pyramid. Hugely important for immune function, but if you want to put it in the context of sport, hugely important for exercise recovery, okay? I don't know about everyone else, but my calves from yesterday are bits. That's muscle soreness, totally normal to have it. Fruit and veg is going to basically help reduce that inflammation, okay? It's the job of fruit and veg. The more colourful fruit and veg is, so those purples and those reds and those kind of pinky fruit and veg, greens, they have more antioxidants. That's why they're that colourful. So they help reduce inflammation, okay? And they also help keep us nice and healthy, okay? So that became a real focus of Irish health, is this idea of having high fruit and veg. Something else that changed is this top of this pyramid. So you can see it's now disjointed from the rest of the pyramid. That used to be all one triangle, and now it's separate. Okay, so in 2016 it changed to be in a complete separate section. The reason for that is these things, so confectionery, processed foods, They're fine in moderation, but they're not necessary to have an overall balanced diet. So they were basically moved away from the pyramid just to reflect that no, you don't need to have these as part of your everyday diet, but they're fine in moderation, but let's limit or avoid those a little bit. What else changed was, because fruit and veg became the base, carbohydrates, kind of your whole grain, cereals, rice, and pastas, is the next tier up, okay? So that moved up, and the portions for that are about 3 to 5 per day, okay? Now, what was really nice about this new revised guidelines is they started being really specific around how much carbohydrate, depending on whether you're active or inactive, which is hugely important, okay? Holly mentioned earlier in terms of fueling the body. So actually, alongside this pyramid, there's like a little key online where it says, okay, if you're active, you should be on the higher end of that carbohydrate. You should be having 5, 6, 7 portions of carbohydrates per day. If you're inactive, 3 is probably enough. So the government are trying to make people a little bit more aware that it's not a one-size-fits-all. You need to kind of find out where you are and work that way. Okay? So that was one of the other major changes. Up along then, so we have our dairy and calcium, which is kind of our middle row here. That's about 3 portions a day. We have above that our proteins, so our chicken, fish, etc. That's about 2 portions a day. And then the last part of the triangle is our kind of fats or oils, and they're basically consumed in small amounts. Okay, so there's no set guideline around that. Okay, so what we're not going to do now, just for the kind of in the interest of time, for yourself, look at your food diary from yesterday. Look at the healthy eating guidelines. Do a little count, and let's just see where you're at in terms of the healthy eating guidelines, okay? You know, you're not going to hit all of these every day, but if you're consistently mishitting one of the shelves of the food pyramid, that's what you take home today. That's what you go and work on. So if your fruit and veg is really, really low, consistently really low, work on it. If your fats or your protein is too high or too low, then go and work on that, okay? So that's the low-hanging fruit that I like to say to people, that these are the things that, okay, everybody in the country should be doing. So if you are interested in physical activity and body composition and sports and exercise and all that, well, these are things that we really, really need to be made of, okay? So that's just kind of the starting point, okay? So hopefully there's something you can take out of that. Also, what was really nice to see in these new health eating guidelines is a little bit around water. So it was 8 glasses of water a day. It's a very arbitrary number, okay? There's no reason why it's 8, it's just 8, okay? There's no actual evidence behind it. They kind of thought that's kind of the least we can say without it seeming like it's a lot, okay? But they now began to implement things like hydration, and there's a little smidge bit in the side down here, a prompt saying we should exercise for 30 minutes a day, okay? So they put very generic physical activity guidelines, very generic, but we're getting it, okay? So the guidelines are written a little bit more tailored to suit the clientele or suit the nation, to suit kind of people's changes in activity, etc. Okay? And I'm not asking anyone to track their food and to write down their food every day. I don't write down my food every day. But people generally have an idea for how they eat throughout the week, and you can kind of get a nice idea of where maybe you might be lacking or maybe you might be over-consuming, etc. Okay? So, again, that's something to think of. Now, at the very top of the page here, I'd just like you to kind of reflect and think, for yourself, what are your priorities? It might be maintenance. You might want to just stay the way you are. You might need to put on muscle, to lose fat, sleep better recovery, perform better in the gym. You know, what is it? So just think to yourself at the moment, and you can write it down if you want, if you're comfortable writing it down. What are your priorities at the moment? Have you any priorities? Or do you want to just feel better, feel healthier, get more energy? Are you looking to change body composition based on what we got, the results we got this morning? Are you looking to correct side-to-side imbalances? So maybe just write down 1 or 2 things that you are looking to focus on yourself. Different ideas. Whenever I do like this I was in with under 20s Friday night, it was like, get bigger, they all want to get bigger, everyone wants to get bigger, it's the whole thing. So everyone will have their own unique goals, okay, and obviously that then is going to change what you take from this and what you're going to implement, okay, so that's kind of our basics, okay, our general health nutrition, that's our basics. Now, feel free to switch off if you think that's already a lot, but maybe keep a little ear out because you'll never know when get all this what the next step is, okay? Because I know there are people in the room from discussions I've had over the last, how many, 2 years? performance nutrition, so how I can use nutrition to help with CrossFit, to help with other sports or running or endurance exercise you might be involved in outside, or to help with body composition goals. Okay, and that's what we call our performance nutrition. Okay, so looking a little bit more specifically at our macros, okay, and our macronutrients. Okay, so for those who maybe aren't familiar, our macronutrients are our carbs, fats, and proteins. Okay, so there are 3 macronutrients. They're called macronutrients because we need them in large amounts in the body or in food. Then we have our micronutrients, which are bitter minerals. We need them in smaller amounts. Okay, so that's why they're called our macronutrients. Okay, so we've got proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Just have a quick look at the top of the page there. Whenever I ask people to rank which macronutrient provides the most calories, people will always say carbohydrates. It's mad. Because there's this huge stigma around carbohydrates being really, really bad for you and being really fattening and things like that. Carbohydrates have the same calories per gram as protein, okay? 4 calories per gram, okay? Fat has 9 calories per gram, okay? So in terms of its calorie density, it's twice that of carbs and proteins, okay? So, the reason people associate carbs with fattening is because when we eat carbohydrates, we store it with water, okay? So sometimes you might get a little bit of water weight, and that's where that comes from. It's not fat mass, okay? We're not putting on body fat when we eat lots of carbs, unless we're way over our calories, okay? But that's why people basically assume that, okay, I feel much heavier, I've had lots of carbohydrates. Well, yeah, when you store carbohydrates, you store it with water, so it's going to be a little bit heavier, but it's not going to be body fat, okay? So, we have our proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, and I'll go through them in a little bit more detail in terms of, for those who are looking at calculations. But just for now, if you go to your food diary from yesterday, and maybe yesterday is not really reflective of what you eat, and if it's not, then it's fine. Circle 3 sources of protein in your diet. If there's not a lot, maybe note some other foods that you eat that are high in protein. Circle 3 sources of carbohydrates in your diet, and circle 2 sources of fat in the diet. Okay, so our proteins can be anything from our kind of lean poultry, meat, beef, fish, yogurts, milks. They're all our proteins. Our carbohydrates, our pastas, rice, cereals. Our vegetables and fruits are carbohydrates. One of my pet peeves is I've cut out all carbs and there's often on a big huge bowl of vegetables. Vegetables are carbohydrates. So again, if you're eating vegetables or eating fruits, they're carbohydrates. Fats, so again, that can be your processed fats. So if you're like Anto, I had a takeaway yesterday, it's probably high fat food, but like other things like avocado, nut butters, seeds, things like that, they're good fat sources as well. So just to give a little circle or kind of commonly highlight the foods you eat. And again, this is a really nice way of just looking, okay, am I over-consuming one area and under-consuming the others? And a big problem in sports nutrition in Ireland across different sports that I worked in is overconsumption of protein, which protein is really filling. So one of the reasons protein is amazing for weight loss and for building muscle is it's the highest in terms of its satiety, which means of all the macronutrients, it makes us feel the fullest for longest. Okay? Which is amazing and great when we're trying to lose weight and cut down our calories. But also it means that sometimes something else has to be compromised, and normally it's carbohydrates, because I'm so full from all the protein I'm eating, I'm actually not hungry, I'm not going to eat carbs. So if you see that you could end up circling 9 or 10 different protein sources from yesterday, and you have 1 carbs, there's an imbalance there, okay? So it's kind of trying to identify why that might be happening. Same with fat. Fat can be really satiating as well. It can make us feel really, really full, and so because of that, we might struggle then to meet our other macros. Okay? In terms of, I suppose, the importance of this, and Holly's already touched on this, when she was talking about the results of the scans, fueling. So our main energy source at high intensity exercising, which CrossFit is, especially when you're talking WODs, is carbohydrate. Okay? So on training days, and days where you know you're going to come here, like yesterday for instance, you're going to be working for 30, 40 minutes, or you're going to come and do a WOD that's even 5 to 15 minutes. If I ask you all to get up and sprint up there now, you're all using fat as you sit here as an energy source, okay? So fat is a really slow burn, okay? So it takes a long time to break down and to use it as energy. So when we're at rest or walking, we're going to use fat as an energy source. When you need energy quickly, okay, so when that WOD starts, when that 3, 2, 1 goes, you switch over to carbohydrate metabolism. So if I asked you all to sprint down there, you're going to switch to carbohydrate usage. It's a really quick energy source. It's the best energy source for high intensity exercise. So, if you don't have carbohydrate in your diet, you're going to be going through that wad fairly sluggish, fairly slowly. If you have carbohydrate, you're going to be a lot quicker. The more carbohydrate you have, the longer you're going to be able to spend at high intensity. Okay? So, that's why carbohydrate pre-exercise is really important, okay? Because it gives you the energy. So, when you eat carbohydrate, you store it in the muscles, okay? So, it's stored in the muscles. We store it elsewhere as well. We don't need to worry about that from an exercise point of view. So, what happens is, you then start using up that carbohydrate. Eventually, so we'll say, let's say yesterday was 40 minutes or just under 40 minutes. Eventually, people were slowing down, okay? So, by that third AMRAP, people were slowing down. And normally that's because our muscle glycogen is like this now, and we switch over to fat because we don't have any more carbohydrate. Now, if you had lots of carbohydrate in the muscle, then you probably could go through that 40 minutes at a fairly decent intensity. So you can kind of gradually, you don't get that dip, you can kind of keep pretty level. So you'll know that if you were writing down your step-ups and your times for your AMRAPs, you'll have even seen if that declined, you'll have seen if that maintained, or if it went the other way, okay? And that's normally to do with just carbohydrate metabolism, how ready you're able to use that. Okay? So carbs are essential for pre-exercise, okay? When you're doing things that are more strength-based and you're not high intensity, okay, then it's not as important to have as much carbs. So if it's predominantly, you're doing strength-based work, and it's all strength-based work, well then you don't need as much carbohydrate because it's not a high-intensity effort as such, okay? So you can kind of play with that a little bit if you want as well, if you're kind of at that level in terms of nutrition. Recovery, okay? Recovery is crucial, and this is something that I'm working on in the new year, is, trying to recover so that you're going into the next session in a good state, so that you're actually able to adapt to the training stimulus and build on what you're doing. Okay? So muscle soreness is totally normal, okay? When you do lots of eccentric training, or lots of training, we'll just say, you get what's called systemic inflammation. So inflammation around the body, totally normal, that manifests itself as soreness. So you'll feel a little bit sore, you get out of bed, the stairs will be a bit trickier, etc. That's completely normal for about 24 to 48 hours. It shouldn't be lasting much longer than that. If it is, there's something you're not doing in that recovery period. So we should be feeling a little bit sore, okay? But when we go back and do the same exercise again a week later, or it's changed, we should be less sore. Our body should be getting used to that stimulus, okay? So there's a little bit there, this is just talk to Anton Hollis, and persistent fatigue, and you're not sleeping. That's a whole different kettle of fish, okay? That's a whole different thing. You've overstretched or exacerbated the body, it's not able to recover, and it's gone too far, and you need to strip it right back, okay? But a little bit of soreness is totally normal. In terms of recovery nutrition, it's really simple. There's like a 4R kind of system. So refuel, okay? So if you fueled for a training session or whatever it is, a competition, if you're doing a competition or whatever it is, if you fueled, you've used up that fuel, well then the obvious thing is you need to replace those carbohydrates afterwards. Okay, so you've used up the carbs, let's get some carbs back on board. Protein, we all associate protein with recovery. It's really important for helping build back up our muscle fibers, etc., and repair. Protein and carbs together work really well to try and recover. Okay, and it's normally, for those who are really nerdy about it like me, it's about a 3-to-1 ratio. So 3 carbohydrates to 1 protein, so 3 to 1. So if you have 30 grams of carbohydrate in a meal, 10 grams of protein, that's the ideal kind of balance. Okay, that 3-to-1 ratio. Rehydrate, again, Holly mentioned the importance of hydration on the body, and for a number of reasons. If you're dehydrated at all, everything feels a lot harder. So your workout feels a lot like water. Every time I mention hydration, someone's like, I need to drink water. Yes, Darren. Everything feels a lot harder. So your perceived effort is a lot worse if you're dehydrated. If you're thirsty, you're already dehydrated. Okay, so if you get that dry mouth sensation, it's probably gone too far already. Okay, so it's drinking to prevent thirst is what you do. Okay, we are very fortunate in that of all nutrition angles, we get direct feedback on how dehydrated we are every time we go to the bathroom. Okay, so it would be amazing if we had that for all aspects of nutrition, but we don't. But urine colour is the easiest way to monitor hydration. Okay, we want to be in this nice pale yellow colour. If we're in this darker yellow colour, we need to drink more water. Okay, so you get this constant feedback. Obviously, if you take things like Barocca and things like that, that will change the colour of urine, and then you need to obviously be a little bit more tuned in. Okay, but it's a really nice feedback tool. Okay, so rehydrate. And lastly, rest. okay? Allow your body time to adapt, to get over the training that you just done, okay? And then very lastly, eat the rainbow. I've already spoken about this, fruit and veg. Fruit and veg with anti-inflammatory properties are going to be crucial to get rid of that muscle soreness, okay? If you don't eat fruit and veg, or you don't like it, put it in a smoothie, blend it up. It's a really easy way to get it on with it, okay? It's going to be really, really helpful for reducing that swelling, that pain that you feel after exercise, getting the body ready to go again, okay? Do people want, like, macronutrients amounts? I'll go through it. As I said, it might be something you don't want to know. As I said, a couple people have asked, but I can specifically talk to them separately. For those of you who want to know, I'm going to go very rough on this. Protein intake for exercising individuals should be anywhere between 1.5 to 2 grams per day. Okay? Anything more than 2 grams, some people think, oh, the more the better. So I'm going to eat 5 grams of protein per kilo. Per gram of body weight, sorry, per kilo of body weight. Yeah. Sorry, did I say that? Sorry, 1.5 to 2 grams per kilo of body weight. You know what your body weight is, sorry. So, people think if I eat 5 grams per kilo, I'm going to get extra gains. No, the body can't use any more than 2 grams. It'll get rid of it, it'll excrete it, or it'll convert to fat. Okay, so 2 grams is that upper limit. Okay, anything over that kind of gets wasted. Okay, so that's our kind of protein, and that's to maintain lean mass, etc. Okay, if you're exercising and you're in the gym and CrossFit, etc. Carbohydrates a little bit different, but if you want to kind of be fairly consistent, about 5 grams per kilo is recommended on kind of moderate training days. Okay, so 5 grams. And then if you're up here, and I only recommend it if you're up around here, you can start manipulating your carbohydrates. So on rest days, you could drop that to 3. And on really high training days, you can bump it to 7. So that's kind of 3, 5, 7. Okay, and that's for people who are really trying to play around with carbohydrate periodization, whether it's from an adaptation point of view or just a performance point of view. Okay? And then fat is whatever is left. It's normally about 1 gram per kilo. That's what it normally works out as. Okay, but it would be work out your proteins, work out your fats. You know your calorie intake from your scan, and then whatever else is left can be attributed to fat. It normally works out about 1 gram per day. Okay, so you know now your energy intake. So your energy intake comes from your carbs, fats, and proteins. Okay, they make up your calories. Micronutrients, your vitamins and minerals, contribute very little energy. Okay, so they're really good for obviously health and well-being, but they contribute very little to our energy. Okay, and to our total caloric intake. Okay, so we know now our energy intake. Okay, so the other side of our energy balance is our energy expenditure. Okay, so what we're expending. And that will basically tell us whether we're in an energy positive state, which basically we're eating more than we're expending. We're in a calorie deficit, which is I suppose the word that's always used, where we're eating less than we're expending, or if we're doing the same, and that means we'll just stay the same. Okay, so if your calories in are more than your calories out, you're going to put on weight. If your calories out are more than your calories in, you're going to lose weight. If they're the same, you're going to stay the same. Okay, so in order to be able to decide where you want to be on that trajectory, you need to know what's contributing to your total daily energy expenditure. The first one, and Holly mentioned already, is your basal or resting metabolic rate. Okay, and that's the calories that your body needs at complete rest just to function. Okay, just keep you alive, circulation, breathing, brain power, etc. And I'm going to hit on some of the questions that came in as well, just as they kind of come through. Somebody asked me about how you change your metabolism. In terms of your basal metabolic rate and resting metabolic rate, there are certain things that will impact your calories per day. And unfortunately, the majority of them are non-modifiable. So things like age. As we get older, our metabolic rate comes down. Females typically have a lower metabolic rate than males, okay? But one of the things that we can change, but it's not overnight, is body composition. Lean mass, muscle mass, has a higher metabolic activity mass, So the more lean mass you have, the more metabolically active those tissues are, the more calories they need to basically be sustained. Okay? So that's our kind of metabolic rate. So there's not a whole lot we can do with that, bar consistency in the gym, getting lean mass up, etc. Okay? There are other aspects of energy expenditure that are easier to change or to manipulate. Okay? And they're the ones that we probably want to be focusing on. So we have TEF, which is the thermic effect of food. Okay? So when we eat carbohydrates, proteins, and fat, they all need to be broken down, absorbed, and stored in the body. Okay? that expends calories. So it takes calories to break down carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Okay? Protein has the highest thermic effect of food in that protein basically uses more calories to get stored and broken down. Again, that's why people who are trying to lose weight want a high protein diet, okay? Because protein has that higher thermic effect of food. Then it's fat and then it's carbohydrates. There's not really much difference between carbs and fats, okay? But protein has a bigger yield of energy to be broken down. Eating slowly. So when you are chewing food, that mastification, that breaking down of food particles, that contributes to energy expenditure. So if you shovel in your food and you take very few bites, you're not really getting those calories because you're not actually chewing that food, okay? When you chew your food slowly, you have more time it spends basically in transit, which means the calories are increased. Now these are minimal, these are small differences, okay? You're not going to, lose lots of body fat by doing these things, but there are small little improvements to be made, okay? So that's an easier aspect than maybe trying to focus solely on body composition. We can increase the amount of physical activity we do. That's an obvious one. If you increase the amount of planned physical activity you do, that increases your energy expenditure. Okay, so if you go to the gym 3 times a week instead of 2 times a week, if you go for a walk 1 evening a week, that's planned, structured, activity. That's obviously going to contribute. The most overlooked part of energy expenditure is NEAT. Has everyone heard the term NEAT before? So NEAT is, up until it was about maybe 7-8 years ago, it was kind of lumped under thermic effective activity, so activity. And now it's become its whole separate entity. And NEAT is non-exercising activity thermogenesis. Okay, so you don't really need to know what it stands for, but essentially, it's unplanned, spontaneous movement. I talk very much with my hands like I'm Italian. That's NEAT. Walking, taking the stairs, brushing your teeth, cooking, cleaning. They're not planned physical activity. You don't go out and say, oh, I'm going to, lose this, I'm going to use this as a way to change my energy expenditure. You just do it as part of your everyday, okay? For people who don't, this doesn't exactly apply to anyone in the room, but for people who don't like structured physical activity, and there are lots of people who don't like structured going to the gym, going, for a run, playing a sport, this is a huge opportunity. And for people who are involved in the gym and different physical activity regimens, this is really nice to add on to that, okay? Taking the stairs, okay? Getting a standing desk, okay, if it's possible, can hugely increase your total daily energy expenditure. Cycling or walking, parking further away from the shop, from the gym, from wherever you're going, increasing your steps, okay, throughout the day. Not a planned walk, but just steps throughout the day. Okay, that's a huge, huge opportunity to increase your energy expenditure and so overlooked. We're always looking at the latest fads in terms of sport and S&C and everything. This is huge, okay? So that is potentially an aspect that you might want to hone in on and focus on. So from that, if you want to think to yourself, what is one way you could increase your energy expenditure in the new year in 2023? Okay, so give you a second to maybe jot down maybe one idea that you might maybe implement over the next couple of months. A general rule of thumb is if you want to stay the same weight, you obviously have your basal metabolic rate, but you could also do another little nifty equation. So about 30 calories times your body weight is your maintenance calories. Okay, if you want it to be really quick. So let's say you have a break between getting in for the in-body scan, okay, and you're just wondering, okay, what are my maintenance calories? 30 calories times your weight is the general rule, okay? So that's kind of your maintenance calories. Obviously, if you're training and things like that, there's obviously other factors, okay, but that's kind of the basic rule of thumb. If you want to be in a calorie deficit, okay, when you're adopting a calorie deficit, an appropriate calorie deficit is 250 to 500 calories a day. I would be inclined to start at 250. That consistently is the best way to lose weight. If you start dropping your calories to, 1,000 calories less than your maintenance, it's just not sustainable. 250 is normally where I would start people. There is evidence to say 500 is fine. And 250, 300 calories is what I would get people to reduce again. Let's flip that on its head. If you're trying to put on weight, 250 to 500 surplus is what's recommended to increase lean mass. Okay? So that rule, that 250, 300 rule, either side of your maintenance calories is going to help you either lose weight or gain weight. Okay? So that's just a nice, easy way to think about it. Some common pitfalls. So, these are just areas that people, I say, sometimes get overlooked, okay? And look, life is there to be enjoyed. I'm a huge food. Food is there to be enjoyed, okay? So enjoy it and absolutely, have what you like to eat. I am definitely not the person who says eat chicken, broccoli, and rice for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There are so many other variations of proteins and carbs that are really good for you, really healthy, but are so enjoyable and tasty. So find something that works for you. But common pitfalls, alcohol. We talk about calorie yielding. Alcohol has 7 calories per gram. Okay, so it's there to be factored in and enjoyed, but just be mindful that if you have certain goals you're looking to achieve, that they're things that need to be accounted for. Portion size. And I was tempted to do it, but I didn't do it today. I do it as part of one of my classes. I get people to pour out a portion size of cereal. And you can get anywhere between 50 grams to 210 grams of oats. That's what someone would deem an appropriate portion size. So again, just be mindful of that, and the cereal portion size are absolute bullshit. Like, you get nothing. But I mean, just be mindful that they are different things, okay? Their portion sizes can be something really easily. And that can work both ways. If you're trying to lose weight, slightly reducing it. If you're trying to put on weight, slightly increasing it, okay? You don't need to add in and change your diet loads. You could just kind of manipulate portion size. Snacking, okay? As part of the healthy eating pyramid that we spoke about earlier, they recommend 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and 2 to 3 snacks a day. So snacking is absolutely fine. If you find yourself consistently snacking, you need to question whether the meals you're having are sufficient to make you feel full, okay? Because otherwise you're just mindlessly eating. Hedonic hunger is a big thing now. It's eating out of pure boredom, and we all do it over Christmas, and pure accessibility. It's there, do nothing else. Just be mindful of those hunger cues. Are you actually hungry? Are you just dehydrated? Sometimes when we're dehydrated, it manifests itself as extreme hunger. So is it a case of I'm just dehydrated? Okay, so just be mindful of that. Calorie-dense foods. This is something in my house we argue about all of the time. My dad is a demon. So things like nuts and seeds and nut butters, and they're amazing and they're really good sources of fat. They pack a lot of calories, okay? So a portion of nuts, great for your omega-3s and 6s, great for fats, and absolutely include them in your diet. If you're having 7 or 8 handfuls of nuts or seeds, you could be anywhere between 1,000 to 1,500 calories. So calorie-dense foods that are very, very small in volume, but pack a lot of punch, can be your best friend, or they can be your worst enemy. So if you're trying to lose weight or mind your weight, be conscious that they contain quite a lot. If you're trying to put on weight and put on size, they're excellent to incorporate into your diet, okay? So, banging them into a smoothie, sprinkling some seeds and nuts or nut butter on top of your porridge. Really, really easy way to get calories in without making you full. But they can work both ways, okay? So just being mindful of them, absolutely incorporate them if you enjoy them, but just be mindful. Same with things like drinks, so like, your really nice coffees or your spiced vanilla lattes, etc. They're amazing and absolutely have them, but just be mindful that they probably do contain quite a lot of calories for a liquid, and then they're gone pretty quickly, and all of a sudden you might still be hungry after them, etc. So just things to bear in mind, okay? So within that, you can kind of reflect on, I know myself, portion size. When I first met Darren, I know who knows Dara, my other half is a good bit taller than me, and I would eat the same amount he was eating at dinner because, we're just plating it up, and he needs way more than I eat. So it's kind of being mindful, and then when I try to reduce my portion size to what I have, I'm starving because my body is so used to having bigger amounts. So just being mindful of that. So there's probably something within that everybody can kind of work on, or potentially work on, depending on what you take from today. So you can kind of have a look at that as well. In terms of, diets, there are lots of diets out there, okay? Keto is popular. Keto is a high-fat diet, very low carbohydrates. The evidence on keto is not really there, potentially for people who do like ultra-endurance events. So I mentioned earlier that fat is a really slow burner in terms of energy. So if you're doing an ultra-endurance marathon and you need energy at low amounts, like and slow and steady, yeah, keto. Where keto 100% is useful is in epilepsy. It's the only type or situation where a ketogenic diet is advised if you are epileptic, okay? Or if you have seizures, okay? It's really, really good. It changes the brain chemistry. Excellent. Besides that, absolutely not. It's very hard to sustain. Paleo and intermittent fasting, look, there are different types. I'm all for a kind of a balanced diet, everything in moderation, that kind of thing. But if anyone wants to know more about those types, we can obviously discuss them. Intermittent fasting is obviously just time where you reduce the time where you eat. So essentially the idea is that less in that smaller window. Okay, so again, it could be that 10-8 diet by 2, just depends. Okay, so if anyone does want to know more about that, I'm happy to chat to them. Trying to have your last big meal kind of 2 to 3 hours before bed, just in terms of digestion, especially if you struggle with sleep. High-fat foods, avoid them before bed. They affect sleep efficiency and sleep quality. If you're undergoing energy restriction or calorie restriction, your sleep could be compromised. So again, keeping that 250, 300 calories deficit. If you go any more than that, your sleep gets a little bit influenced. Fluid intake, so if you drink lots and lots of water before bed, if you're like me now, I was talking to someone in here last year, one of my things is increase in hydration, and I was up through the night about 4 or 5 times, so I had to try and make sure that I'm hydrated during the day and avoiding fluids at night, just to basically stop influencing sleep. High protein will also help with sleep quality. For those who are trying to muscle build, this is in the questions, really, really good opportunity to muscle build is overnight. So if you have protein before bed, and this came from researching kind of older adults with sarcopenia, if you have like milk or a protein shake, we'll talk about that in a bit, before bed, it's a really good opportunity to increase protein throughout the night. Because otherwise, as you can imagine, you sleep and you don't eat for 8 hours, what happens to your protein is just kind of breaks down, okay? Whereas if you have milk, it kind of stays constant, so you wake up in a better state. Melatonin, which is obviously the hormone that kind of regulates sleep. I don't advise taking melatonin artificially, okay? Absolutely not. But if it's incorporated into foods, it can be really good for sleep. So things like tart cherries, raspberry, goji berries, some of your walnuts, almonds, things like that, they have naturally occurring melatonin. They're really good for sleep as well. Okay. And then just on the back, there are just some healthy, these are ones that Holly had up last time, so again, you can just look at them in terms of healthy, are they more likely? So they're just kind of summarising some of the things that we spoke about today as well. Okay, so you can have a look through those. And just for yourself, if you want to write down a healthy habit that you will start implementing today, I'll just get up some of the questions and we can go through them. I think I've got a couple of questions in. Sorry guys, for some reason the suggestions box stopped working yesterday. If you put in any questions yesterday, I didn't get it. Feel free to ask me. So one of the first questions that came in was around dairy and inflammation. And does dairy cause inflammation? What foods cause inflammation and can reduce, etc.? First things first, there's no direct link between dairy and inflammation, unless you're intolerant or have intolerances or allergies to dairy, which you might not be aware of. Okay, so if you consume dairy and you feel quite nauseous and sick afterwards, you might have some form of intolerance. What does cause inflammation or can is fat. So if you're noticing that you're the person, I don't know who was, that feels quite ill after dairy, it could be potentially because of the fat content. So potentially try switching to a lower fat version of protein or milk, yogurts, etc. should help. Okay, but dairy itself doesn't cause inflammation. Things that will cause inflammation: high amounts of red meat, high amounts of seafood, like extreme amounts, alcohol, they all cause inflammation. Things that reduce inflammation: fruit and veg, oily fish, so like our omega-3s and 6s, salmons, tunas, etc. They're really good for inflammation as well. Okay, but if whoever that is, if you do want to chat to me, then can. But dairy itself won't cause it, but the full fat version is good. Yeah. Right? No. So depending on the source of sugar, so our intrinsic sugars, which are basically our sugars that are built into fruit and veg, so within the cellular structure, don't. But our extrinsic sugars, things like high fructose corn syrup and kind of our processed sugars, they could cause inflammation, yeah. But our intrinsic sugars, so part of our fruit and veg structures, they're fine. The extrinsic ones can potentially cause inflammation. Yeah, so things like fruit juices, manufactured fruit juices, things like that, they're extrinsic sugar, they're not part of the cellular structure. Somebody wrote up about flatulence, okay, so about gastrointestinal issues and food. Just to start off with, flatulence is totally normal, okay, so everybody does it. It's about, I think on average, like 5 to 15 times a day, people will pass gas in some shape or form. When you eat, you take in quite a lot of air as you eat, okay, that air gets trapped in the digestive system and it needs to come out one way or another, okay. So, a couple of tips on that. If you find you are, excessively passing gas to a stage where you're like, I don't think that's normal, okay, then a couple of things. Slow down when you're eating, okay, it means you trap less gas, okay. Smaller meals more frequently, okay, because what happens is when you, let's say it's not an issue of getting air when you eat, but it's when you digest the food, it also creates air. So if you have smaller meals, okay, that will create less there. Okay, so again, that could be the issue. You could have an intolerance, so what I would do personally is I would write down if there are days where you feel like you are excessively flatulent, or have excessive flatulence, bloating, belching, etc. Write down what you've eaten and try and identify triggers to what's actually causing that. Things like green leafy vegetables are an obvious one. Certain fruits like apples and peaches tend to cause lots of flatulence, okay, so it could be something around that that's causing the issue, okay. So in terms of, I think somebody wrote in it as well, this how much it smells or doesn't smell, that's based on what you eat. So sulphur causes the smell of farts, essentially. Okay, so if you eat high sulphur foods, it smells. If you don't eat high sulphur foods, it doesn't. That's the only thing causing it. It's not really a gastrointestinal issue. Okay, so just so people are aware. Loads of questions on gut health, which I find really interesting because that's a lot of my research now is on gut health. So for those of you I suppose who don't know, so gut health, we have what are called microbiota, which are basically bacteria in the gut. That help to kind of break down foods, help keep us nice and healthy and fight immunity, etc. So the more good bacteria we have, the better. Okay, so our stomach has bad and good bacteria. So things like probiotics and prebiotics are recommended to help modulate gut microbiota, help give us more good bacteria, get rid of our bad bacteria. Okay. In terms of products, probiotics, so Yakult is really good. Okay, so Yakult is one that I would recommend to most people. It helps with good health and good bacteria. Somebody asked about Synprove. Synprove is good. Synprove is an interesting one because Synprove has both prebiotics and probiotics, but because of the European Commission law, they're not allowed to advertise either because they contain both. So it's a bit of an interesting one. But Synprove, S-Y-M. Yeah, so yeah, it's really good as well. They just can't advertise as a pre or probiotic because they contain little bits of both. But yeah, really good in incorporating the diet. I wouldn't say everyone needs a probiotic, but if you struggle to break down and you get a lot of, if you get quite bloated and stomach issues around eating, then potentially you could introduce a probiotic. Okay.
Is that the acidophilus?
Yes.
Good? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's good as well. Yeah, that's part of what's in the Synprove.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Are they the same as kombucha and
Exactly, so you can get them naturally occurring. So things like kombucha, kimchi, things like that, they're all more natural ways of consuming probiotics. And
beer, I mean, it's behind everywhere.
Yeah.
So easy.
Anything fermented is kind of a really natural way of getting them on board if you don't want to go down the kind of addition route.
I think it's fine for lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
Kefir.
Yeah, so it just depends on your the taste and stuff. I think that's
I know.
people
It's
like
hard.
Yeah, more so than anything. Protein diets was probably one of the main questions that was asked. Do I recommend protein shakes? I'm going to be a little bit of a hypocrite right now because I do think supplements should be the last thing that's added, but I feel like protein supplements are really beneficial for two reasons. One, if you're trying to hit that 2 grams per kilo per day and you weigh 90 kilos and you need 180 grams of protein a day, that can be quite difficult to get from food sources. So in that case, a protein, for anyone who's not familiar, like a scoop of protein is about 25 grams of protein. So it's really easy, and if you're watching your calorie intake, it's a really nice way to get protein on board. Likewise, if you train late or you train early and you don't have time and the practicality and kind of just your life is in the way, a whey protein can be really good, okay? It can be added into porridge, smoothies, etc. So a little bit of a hypocrite, I'm all for food first, but if it's I'm food first, not food only. If you can't get it from food only, then a supplement is fine. In terms of supplements I recommend, like My Protein, Kinetica, Optimum Nutrition, there is a website called Informed Sport, and it's not much of an issue here, but basically you can go on Informed Sport, they have a whole list of certified brands. And I'm not saying, that's good from obviously an anti-doping point of view for athletes, but it's good because it means they're batch tested, which means they don't have any crap in them that's going to have a negative effect, okay? So it's good obviously for athletes who are getting drug tested, but it's actually good for the general population because they're batch tested and they're safe and they're good to take, okay? So things like My Protein, Kinetica is the one that I use myself, and there's loads of other ones that are really good to use as well. So if you are trying to get on that higher protein diet, it can be really helpful to have. Somebody asked around gluten-free and dairy-free deficiencies. So if you're gluten-free and dairy-free, what are some nutritional deficiencies you might see? If you're gluten-free and dairy-free, and if it's by choice as opposed to an actual reason. So if you're gluten intolerant or dairy intolerant and they don't agree with you and you're off them, then that's fine. If you're not having them because you think that's a strategy to get to where you want to be, let's have a conversation. Because I don't agree with normal restricted diets unless there's a reason for it. As long as you're quite conscious about your nutrition, there's no real issue. In terms of your dairy and calcium might be an issue if you're avoiding dairy, so you need to make sure that you're having lots of green leafy veg to kind of get your calcium, lots of beans, lentils, pulses and that as well. Fibre, for those who don't have gluten in the diet, fibre can be an issue. There's so many alternatives out there though, so they're the two main things, so calcium and fibre are the main two that are an issue with those two types of diets. So, same with vegetarian diets and vegan diets. So again, if they're well managed, there's no issue with having a vegetarian and vegan diet. And performance goals or body composition goals, protein is the obvious one, okay? So, there's so many plant-based proteins, but the reason why protein is an issue is because when our proteins have amino acids, so essential amino acids essentially, and all our animal proteins contain all the essential amino acids, whereas our plant proteins don't contain all the essential amino acids except for soy does. So you just, as a vegetarian, have to be good at combining your proteins together to make sure you're getting enough, okay? So it's called complementary protein. So adding beans with rice helps you to get a full profile of protein, okay? So there's definitely lots of ways around it. Vitamin B12 is probably the only vitamin I would recommend for vegetarian and vegan athletes, or people who are engaged in exercise, because it comes from basically animals and grazing of soil for those animals. So sometimes that's the main deficiency is vitamin B12. But everything else can be managed through diet. The other only vitamin I would recommend to everybody is vitamin D during the winter months. Everybody should be taking some form of vitamin D supplement. People who exercise, people who don't exercise. We don't get a lot of sunlight. We definitely don't get enough from our food, so vitamin D is something I would definitely recommend. Metabolism I kind of touched already. Timing of meals. So last big meal before you train, 2 to 3 hours is optimal. In terms of recovery, as soon as you can, okay? So if you're training again the next day, try to get some food or something on board straight away afterwards, or within that kind of 1 to 2 hour period if you can.
If you were going to do a competition, let's say, and you wanted to maximise your glycogen stores, what?
Carb loading?
Yeah, what kind of, would it be 2 days for you?
Yeah, so traditionally or historically they used to think you have to carb load for 7 days. 3 days is optimum. 3 is probably optimal, yeah.
So as in 3 whole days before?
So let's say game or competition Saturday from Thursday morning.
Okay.
Yeah, so you could count the Saturday in that, or even from the Wednesday night. Yeah.
Okay.
So basically, but, caveat, if you have a high carb diet anyways, you can do it the day before or 2 days before.
Oh.
If you're on a lower carbohydrate diet and you want to go high, then 3 days out. But if if you already eat 5-6 grams per kilo and you just want that extra more than a day or two beforehand. Okay. So that's the whole idea of carbohydrate loading. If you want to see if you did it right way yourself, you'll be heavier. As I said, carbohydrate stored in water is a really nice way to check if you carbohydrate loaded efficiently. So that just means you basically super swell the muscle. So when you eat carbohydrate, we have a limited ability to store it. So you can store it in the muscles and eventually it will be packed out, and that's when it's called carbohydrate loading. Unfortunately, with fat, we can keep on storing fat, and that's why people put on weight. So we don't have a limited ability, we just keep storing it. And that's when, obviously, weight becomes an issue and body fat becomes an issue. Unfortunately, carbohydrate just gets converted and stored as fat, and we eat too much. And then lastly, the carbs-fat-protein split for somebody looking to lose weight. So we've gone through calculations, but traditionally the split, let's say in terms of percentage, used to be 45, 30, 25, which would be 40% carbs, 45% protein, 30% carbs, 25% fat. That's actually changed in the last year or two. And what's found to be better is 50, 35, 15. So 50% carbs, 35% protein, 15% fats. That's probably the best if you're looking for a training split. In terms of losing fat and building muscle, 50% of your total daily intake is from carbohydrate, 35% from protein, 15% from fat.
I think kind of on a training day as well, it'll be 50% carbs, but you could potentially take that down if you're not training.
Exactly. Take your
not
carbs down and put the protein up.
Yeah. Swap it over. I have one question.
Yeah.
Last thing, because I think it applies to a lot of people here as well. The goal is, to increase muscle, which will help to increase your metabolism, your bone density, all those kind of drop fat, all those things. So when we talk about supplements and the things that we would recommend, yeah, okay, maybe a protein shake, but I know Anta likes to recommend ZMA, but creatine. It's one I've taken previously and I think it's amazing. I don't take it anything actually. I should probably take a bit of a D, but
so
I don't know how it works, but I know it works.
Yeah, so I've just started creatine again, so I go in and out of creatine. I'm back on it now. It doesn't agree with me mainly, so I'm kind of trying to do that. So there are 5 supplements that I would endorse if you are on that next level. So caffeine, 100% works. Creatine, really good. I'll go through them. Sodium bicarb, beta-alanine, and dietary nitrates. They're the 5 that have, from a performance review. ZMA amazing for sleep and recovery as well. Okay, but they're the 5. Okay, so creatine, basically short intensity exercise. You use an energy system called ATP PCR. Okay, so it's ATP phosphocreatine. That's the energy system. You use it for about 10 to 15 seconds of efforts. So once you've maxed out that energy store, you have to switch over to a different energy source, which is a little bit slower. So if you imagine, if you have more creatine, it's the phosphocreatine system, if you have more creatine in the body, you can do more repeated efforts at a high intensity. Now we get creatine from food, so there's lots of creatine in red meat, but when we cook red meat, it breaks down the creatine content. So that's why we supplement it. So creatine is really, really good for increasing like lean mass and strength, and it's being consistently shown in males, females, different sport paradigms. It's really, really evidence-based. You do store water, so you will put on a bit of weight with creatine, okay, because we store it with water as well. So the way that works in terms of dosage is you do what's called a slow loading dose, and that's kind of what I'm just finished on now. So it's you take 20 grams a day, split into 4 doses of 5 for 7 days. So you do 5 grams 4 times a day for 7 days. And that's basically, you're trying to saturate the muscle full of creatine. So you're trying to basically get a lot of creatine in there very quickly. After that 7 days, you drop it to 5 grams per day. And it's 5 grams per day consistently then. Yeah.
For like 6 months.
Yeah.
And it will say that on your thing as well, you know, like, and how to take it.
Yeah, it's really good for strength, really good for lean mass, and it's...
And would you, like, say someone's in that C shape, you know, which most of us are starting out, would you, I know it's from food, but say as well, if you don't eat meat, is it veggie? Can you hit?
Yeah, so creatine monohydrate, you can have it veggie, that's why you can have the supplement,
right,
so get the monohydrate if you're getting it.
Yeah.
And 100%, and like, it can be quite severe on the stomach by itself, but if it's mixed in with a carb and protein source, so I put it in a smoothie or a porridge, it's a lot easier to handle on the stomach.
Even, I know some people go like that.
Yeah, some people dry scoop it, yeah. If you've got don't have stomach issues, go for it.
Yeah, and throughout the day as well, sipping in your water.
Yeah,
because if you don't taste, well, you can get ones that you don't taste, that you don't feel in it, that dissolve and stuff. But
there's not much of a taste of it in fairness, there's not, but it is, like, if you are looking for that extra bit, what it will allow you to do is allow you to have a lot more strength in the gym, which means that you can then increase the mass. Now it'll take a while to see it, really, really good.
And would you, let's say not recommend, but would you not recommend someone new starting out to take it?
Yeah, I think if you were still figuring all this out, I feel like that's something that's even higher, but I feel like if you think, I'm good enough on my macros and I just want a little bit more strength and mass, then absolutely I would recommend.
Obviously getting your food down first and making everything sustainable, I suppose that is the goal. Don't change loads of things all at once, little small steps, like just literally eating slower can make a huge difference, and then you're like, oh, I'm happy with that now. Just noticing, just literally just being aware of what's going in and how it feels to you as well. Those are the main things.
Like don't go in, try and change everything, because you're not going to, little things come back. This is, I mean, it's not a intervention, it's a lifestyle change. It should be routine day in, day out. So it's kind of just picking the little low-hanging fruit, let's do that, and then once I know that, that's part of my routine and it's part of everything, then move on to the next part. Does anyone have any other questions? Sorry, because the thing shut off yesterday, so I don't know if anyone wrote out me in. First, I'm going to answer that question too, because I drink an insane amount of caffeine, but I don't respond to caffeine supplementation because I'm so habitualized to it. I just don't. Okay. I could drink anywhere between like 5 and 6 a day, and normally because there's not a load of caffeine in coffee, so like it depends what you're having. I mean, 2 to 3 is probably, as long as you keep it nice and hydrated. It should be fine. I am not the person to ask.
No,
because I
you
drink
say that makes
excessive
me feel
amounts of
better.
caffeine. Yeah, and like that means that if you do take it, you're not sensitive to it. So like, caffeine's a really good supplement for free exercise, but you become very accustomed to it quite quickly if you drink high amounts of caffeine. And like avoid. One of my other pet peeves as a sport nutritionist is energy drinks. I'm sorry, people have them. I just say high amounts of caffeine, they have so much crap in them that is just not necessary. Yeah, and I see people in the gym have them as a pre-workout. I'd much rather someone have a caffeine or even like the caffeine tablets or something like that. It's much better than the drinks. But look, if you like them, you can incorporate them, but just know that probably not the best thing to have.
Yeah, absolutely would agree.
Karen? Sorry, you mentioned a few things there. Caffeine, creatine, and then...
So sodium bicarb,
Oh, yeah.
beta-alanine and nitrates. They're the 5, I was going to say they're my 5, they're not. The International Olympic Committee, they're the 5 supplements that they basically put forward. Beta-alanine.
You can get creatine with that in it.
I know that.
And nitrates. Nitrates is beetroot juice. So like beets and rhubarb and rocket, they're really good for blood flow.
Oh, they're the little shots.
Little shots, yeah, they're really, really good more for like endurance type stuff. Nitrates, so like beetroot juice, like the beetroot shots, they're really good for like vasodilation, blood flow, so if you're running and things like that, they're really good just to keep the efficiency. Beta-alanine and sodium bicarb are good again for high intensity. That's like you probably take them from all of these.
Oh yeah.
I've taken beta-alanine and sodium bicarb. Again, a little bit more since I'm stuck up the tingles you get from the beta-alanine.
Oh, you're like a little junkie.
Yeah. So there's little things, and then so they're the 5 that I would say work, and then like other supplements like vitamin D is a big one. There's my plug. Vitamin C and gelatin, they're ones that, like if you suffer from injuries, are really good to have. You could like buy gelatin and like put it into your little biologic cubes, and like they're really good for like people who get tendon injuries and like those kind of things.
Is Benfuels designed for women's needs, or is it just the same genetic?
It's their branding. Yeah, they picked a target and they've gone with it, but they're informed sport as well. They contain all what they should contain. Yeah.
Cool. That's Irish, aren't they?
The Benfuels, yeah. I think they're Cork. I think.
Yeah.
Karen, what about a protein shake? How many ounces?
A scoop, so about 25 grams.
But for the overall, like if you're putting in food, is it?
So about the scoop, I think it's a scoop 25 grams.
Yeah, usually.
Yeah, so just a scoop on the Yeah, so you put either a half or like, so think about a protein shake, it's about 25 grams of protein, and a pint of milk is 20 grams of protein, so I mean it's much, but if you are looking at, you don't want to have all the fat that goes with it, everything like that. A half a scoop or a full scoop, I can put a full scoop in a pint of chocolate. And the flavour will be really nice. I've never had plain protein, but like the chocolate ones are amazing to put into stuff.
Yeah, chocolate and vanilla, and you can bake with them and everything.
Yeah.
Put it in everything. Not me personally, but maybe anyone else have any other questions in general, or about your scan in particular? Me and Anton will be here for a little bit after.
Oh, sorry. On the creatine, 5 grams, is that kind of across the board for everyone?
Yeah, everyone.
Regardless of body
weight, yeah. It's all after the fast loading, the 20 grams per day for 5 to 7 days. That's as much as the muscle can take in on a daily basis. Yeah. So now obviously if you do try it and you get any stomach issues, you prolong that loading period, which is what I'm doing now, just because. And then once you kind of got into routine with that kind of 4 by 5, then you just drop it to 5 grams every day. Yeah. Scoop normally comes in a 10 grams, which is really annoying, but it's half a scoop. Yeah, 10 days, yeah. So you need to be supplemented with creatine for like 4 months before you start seeing any difference. It needs to fully saturate, so it's daily.
Yeah. After 6 months.
Yeah. Overnight, it doesn't happen like that. 6 months from today.
It is, yeah. So everyone.
If you started it and you didn't saturate it, and you're on it for the last month,
Should be fine. Yeah. It
but
should.
do you saturate now, or
No, you just need that, and it's more just if you want it quicker, but if you're on it for the month already, you should be fine by now. Yeah, it's more just a time thing that people do that. Yeah. I did you start on them?
Yeah.
Yeah, then it's fine.
you know, see?
That's everybody's question.
Yeah, you answered all my
Yeah.
seed oils.
Yeah.
What's just grand?
In moderation?
Yeah, in moderation, they're fine. Yeah, they're better, like, are you on about for cooking? Yeah, so, like, again, they're in moderation. They have lots of, like, good essential fats and stuff in them as well. But it's just in moderation, small amounts. They're, like, people always ask about things like those fry lights and oils and stuff. I mean, it depends what your goals are. If you're trying to keep your calories down, then your little fry lights, I mean, they contain, they're quite synthetic, so I'd be prefer to go around the seed oil type thing. But again, it just depends on what you're looking at. I use some for cooking, like rapeseed oil and things like that. I think they're better and tastier, but it's just quantity more than anything.
That makes sense, yes. And sorry, maltodextrin. How do you feel about maltodextrin?
Yeah, good. It's a carbohydrate base, so again, if you're getting sufficient carbohydrate, so maltodextrin is just a polysaccharide, it's like a long chain carbohydrate. If you're getting enough from carbohydrates in your daily intake, then you don't need to be taking it separately. But if you're not, then maltodextrin is fine.
Okay.
It's quite sweet. It's like
yes, the bit.
It's very sweet.
Karen, thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I think I finished off there just to make sure that it is just habit-based things, like that is a lot. Just have your basic protein, fat, and carbs, and then as long as that is there, then you can start saying, okay, how much of that is there? And that's the InBody is a great way to see, is what I have changed? Is it working? Is it doing something? And just to see your gains in here, like you'll feel it in your back spot, but to see it, oh my God, I got another kilo of muscle on my head or whatever, it's a nice thing to see it, but to leave time in between them as well. Nothing's going to happen overnight with this kind of thing. It is a sustainable basis over a long period of time. So that's all it is.